Getting a quorum.
I think we're all set. We certainly have a quorum.
That's the way to go. That would
Good
be.
to see you all.
This is a new record for a crowd here.
And just a reminder that our meeting is being recorded and the microphones are live during the recording, and so mindful of your side conversations. And we should get started.
This is mandated. Okay.
So first order of business are the minutes. And can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
John, and there's a second, Chris. Any changes or additions? I had one or two things here. But anyone else? Okay. Let's see. I think in the first page of the minutes, and John or other folks are better versed at this than I am. So when it says the motion to the minutes passed 5-2, because we had two abstentions, I think it should read 5-0-2. Is that correct, the abstention?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then I wanted to double check on page, so
Oh, you
that,
didn't get the color coded, I didn't send it in color.
no, I got a,
Okay.
You want my email?
okay, so
was just
what do we
easier to-
have
from the-
here? So, I guess I want to make sure, as it reads, this, I'm sorry, I'm looking at page 3.
Okay.
Project updates B, our review of the project list.
Okay.
So it starts with the first 6 listed programs, there's no action needed. And then the part hi Mike, the part I see there's parts that I can't see.
Right.
And so I want to just make sure that we had the other, okay, so we have the extension of the dog park.
Yep.
Okay. And, let's see. And then we have do we have the cultural center? And Montero House. Okay, so I'm just looking at where, so with this one says cultural center. Okay, then this one, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the color coded. All right, then we have the marina expansion, and then we have the Heritage Trail, Mendez Montero House, drinking water, cultural center. Okay, great. So I couldn't, I just want to make sure that.
Color match the.
Yep, okay, great, thank you.
That's the easiest way I could find it.
So my only, the only change that I'm recommending is we just write
Yep.
that in as 5-0-2. Okay, so, a motion to approve the minutes with that one correction.
I'll move.
That's Jim, and a second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Margaret, one abstention. Thank you. Okay, invoices. Thank you. We have our annual membership dues with the coalition. They're an amount of $3,500. I have forwarded to folks their annual report, so you can see what the coalition has been up to in terms of advocating for the community preservation committees and act in the town. Okay, I'm going to pass this along. Any other invoices? Do we have any Savastano
No?
invoices? Okay, we're all clear there. Okay. Very good. And while that is being looked at and coming up the line, and Mike, you always seem to be able to sit in the catbird seat for these. So
Not intentionally.
you're a veteran. And so we received the end of the year financial report from the town accountant Donna Fernandez. And I can't say enough about Donna's support in this. She's on top of these. If I have any particular questions, hi, Susan. You might need to move a chair. We might need to go to an auditorium or something, do you think? Yeah.
Ready to move down?
Yeah. All right, we're gonna make,
I can switch in between.
Yeah,
yep,
right here.
really just, yeah, you don't have to sit, this is a very sweaty hat today, so I'm gonna put it right up here.
Very sweaty
The
human.
only thing we don't have is a microphone, so we can share, Susan. That was a nice article.
Thank you.
I know I'm late, but I haven't been here. There we go. Okay.
But are you ready to make the motion on this one, or do you want to?
Yeah, we're ready for
Okay.
that.
I'll make a motion to approve $3,500 invoice to the Community Preservation Coalition for their annual dues.
Second.
All right, any discussion, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, very good, thank you. And we'll sign that on the way back. Terrific. I'm gonna pass out handouts, some additional financial information that kind of is based on Donna's report to us. Get to it, here it is. Should have your own copy. I have not emailed this to anybody, so this is probably enough. Yeah, I think that's gonna be enough. You take one and pass it down. So we have town accountant's report. At the close of this fiscal year in June 30th, 2025. We've got, looks like surcharge revenues of $928,648.99. And then Donna gives us the ending balances on all of our reserves and the unrestricted. And so let's stop there for a moment. What I passed out then kind of takes those figures and kind of puts it into a projection for fiscal '26. So we are starting at the top of that of those figures that I've handed out. We're estimating a 15% state match. We've been cautioned to keep it under 20%. Last year was 18, a little bit more than 18%. So we're kind of projecting 15% match. The surcharge revenue is projected to be 2% over the FY25 collections, so that 928,648 figure that Donna has given us, a 2% increase on that would get us somewhere in the ballpark of $947,000 in surcharge revenue for fiscal '26. That's a 15% match of that revenue, would be about $139,000, for a total of a little more than $1 million in revenue coming in. We have no debt service. We have retired all of our debt. So
Right.
that's cool.
This is cool.
Our standard amount that we've kind of budget for is $35,000 in administrative fees, which actually works out to about 3.2% of our projected revenue, which is less than the allowable 5%, but we typically don't even spend the 35 that we have. And anything we don't spend just rolls into our unrestricted funds for projects in the future. The balances that Donna has provided us, as of June 30th, you'll see that figure down at the bottom chart, as well as the projected reserves. $257,083.60 for community housing, $698,984.85 for historic preservation, $127,079.75 for open space. Our reserve for debt, Donna applied that to our final reserve, our final debt service payments, so we don't have that debt reserve anymore. And then $2,597,192.44, unrestricted, for a total of $3,680,340.64, which is the starting balances going into the fiscal year. If you go back up, you look at our starting balances and then our projected revenue, we are looking at the total amount of money available to commit to projects in fiscal '26 is $4,731,860. Now, were we to do that, we would then have everything run down to zero, but theoretically, one could commit that much money to projects in fiscal '26. That third chart shows what we have done thus far with the fiscal '26 funds. We've committed to $110,000 to the housing reserve, $35,000 to historic preservation, $110,000 to open space, and then the remaining of that projected $1,051,519 would go to unrestricted, and that works out to be about $796,500. So that's how that works. June projects, we've committed 75. Town meeting has committed 75,000 from historic preservation reserve to the two projects that were before us. And so our balance, because we've made no further commitments yet, we've got this one now proposal before us. So, for instance, the housing balance won't change for the rest of fiscal '26. So our housing balance for fiscal '26 is going to be $367,084 next June 30th. The open space, we have no further proposals for open space, so all those commitments are made. So that will be $237,080. We are looking at historic preservation of $658,985, less if we recommend this, then town meeting approves the proposal before us, that'll be about $22,000 less, because we have committed it to a project. So, looking at $1 million or so coming in, expending maybe $100,000 approximately, we will end up somewhere in that vicinity of $4.6 million as a starting balance for fiscal '27. It's kind of what it looks like. The one thing is, is just how the surcharge revenue comes in. That's just projected. It comes close to 2% increase each year, but not necessarily. And of course, the state match, which could bottom out to nothing. So we don't know that. But that's what this is all kind of describing. So, any questions about this?
I do.
Yeah.
So knowing the upheaval, and I know the legislature hasn't released, the budget is not out yet. And now that the bill went through federally, what is the constitutional, so cannot be changed, obligation to the state match, or is there not one?
There is an obligation to divide the pie of the fees that are, the registry fees that are collected. So the state match comes from an account that the revenue is depending on a filing fee surcharge. So
Filing fee on what?
things at the registry, so things
Okay.
like
Real
mortgages,
estate.
stuff like that. So that revenue then becomes dependent, certainly dependent upon what the housing market in particular looks like. So if housing starts to drop, if sales of housing sales drop, then there's less registering going on at the Registry of Deeds, and then that revenue drops.
But is that in the Constitution, do you know?
Well, it's in the Act. The Act, I think, lays
Okay.
out the formula
Okay.
for how that gets distributed. And then the other thing that affects how much gets distributed at the state match is how many people you have to divide the pie by. So when you read that, different, I think it's now up to 200, I think.
201.
201 communities have adopted the CPA. So every time that number goes up, the slice of pie gets a little bit smaller
Okay.
for everybody. So the one thing that isn't part of the statute that we hear about every year is there's advocacy that when there's a surplus in the budget, that the legislature would put more money into the state match fund. And they've done that a few years, but they're not obligated to do that, and they didn't do that this past year. And usually, I think the coalition tries to advocate for an additional $10 million or something like that from a surplus. Other questions? Okay, so we're very flush with funds. And certainly we can weather some very thin times in terms of state match. So all of that is good. I guess the one thing I would always caution about this is, we're here to facilitate that CPA revenue turns into tangible benefits. So it's not much of a tangible benefit to have a bunch of money in the bank. We need proposals. And so I think that's one thing to watch, as we go forward, because some of these reserves are getting kind of big. Okay. I think that any other questions of this report also includes things like, you can see the outstanding balances for various projects. I take those numbers and I have a spreadsheet, and I just kind of put those, I take Donna's numbers on how much has gone, a particular project has expended, so that we can kind of just keep track of overall how much of the money that has been committed is still outstanding. And for years now, we've generally stayed in the ballpark of at any given year, about 85% of the awarded funds have been expended. So we're kind of generally, we add some projects, but other projects then close out, et cetera, et cetera. So we always seem to stay roughly around that figure on a year-over-year basis. So I think those are the highlights from Donna's report, but certainly as we go along, if there's any questions about other parts of her report, they can bring them up at a future meeting and stuff. I'm happy to go over those, and I'm sure we haven't had Donna come to our meeting in, I don't know, a decade or more, but, if we really wanted to talk to her, she'd be happy to come, I'm sure.
Buddy, do you know if
Yes.
there's any provision in the act to invest surplus revenue?
In terms of like,
We've got this surplus revenue just sitting there.
oh, yeah,
Got a pile of cash and,
great question.
you know.
I don't know the, there's
it'd be
probably
nice
some,
to get
right. Right.
some return on it if we could on, I know towns are very limited on what they can invest
Right.
in, but
Right.
it would seem to me that, you know, I don't see this money disappearing anytime soon, so why not try to earn some interest on it?
Yeah.
Rather than going backwards.
Yeah. Yes, Jim?
I recollect in another place that the surplus, these funds are held by the, I guess, the treasurer, some one of the town hall people, who invest the town's entire balance of funds at the moment, and that those earnings from that were then allocated back to the CPC funds. Does this sound familiar, buddy?
Yes, I think the thing, it would be great, I'm gonna pose that question to Donna, because I think there are certain,
It's in the article here. It says, Section 7,
uh-huh,
in case of a CPC cash is pooled on municipal funds, the treasurer must allocate the interest earned on the CPC portion of the to the Community Preservation Fund. Unfortunately, it's impossible to transfer, lost in a shuffle. So I guess there's some provision in here. If you go to the Home Technical Assistance CPC account,
Yeah.
earned interest, check your CP2 form, whatever that means. There's a
Yeah.
whole section in here that talks about, looks like investing or interest.
Earning interest in a bank account is
Right.
next
The
to
interest earned on
zero.
the cash sitting in a community must be credited back to the fund. So, interest is interest, whether it's a high yield or,
Well, we know it's not a high yield, banks just aren't offering
Is it in a
anything.
bank or is?
So, my question is, can we invest it outside of just a regular savings account? And that's probably something that, Gary
yeah, Gary or Donna would know that, yeah.
can answer.
Can we
It's
invest
just
it-
something to consider and,
Right.
Can we
Talk
invest
about.
it in our farming community in form of ag preservation trust?
Would have to be, probably not, but unless we get that article, so that it really is something, that, you know, we get that article, but, no, you know, are there other financial instruments that we can put the money into?
CD,
I don't think this can be invested because it has to be at zero risk.
has to be what?
Right, I know.
Zero risk.
I don't know if it has to be zero, but I know it's gotta be very low risk. It can't be a high risk. You know, anything the town invests in can't be high risk, but
A CD, something like that?
probably earning 0.2% somewhere and, you know, Jesus, can we do a little bit better than that? You know,
Let me,
it doesn't hurt to ask,
Yeah,
right?
right, let me pose that question to Donna, and also, she could probably give us a report on, you know, over the last few years, just how much interest has
Have we,
come back into our funds. All right, I can ask her that. Great.
Oh, wait a minute, right here. The treasurer may deposit and invest the proceeds of any fund in savings banks, trusts, and corporation under the laws of the Commonwealth, banking community. Yeah, there is a section there, buddy.
So we gotta follow the laws,
Yeah,
obviously.
53, chapter 44, section 7.
Uh-huh.
That has the breakdown of what, basically what the treasurer would have to do. Deposit or invest the proceeds, which I remember is at FDIC. Yeah, section
Okay.
5444, yeah. So there's provisions there, but I'm sure there are a ton of restrictions when it comes to that, but it's listed in that little section, yeah.
Well, I will check in with Donna, I think she'd be happy to give us some information on that.
It was right there.
Okay,
They sent us. Right inside that.
We have some progress status reports
CPC news.
to touch base on. One from the Northern Scenic Greenway. So they're waiting for the Mass Trails grant. If they don't get it, they are going to combine their CPA funds from the three municipalities, Westport, Dartmouth, and New Bedford, to complete the first phase of the project. And the Mendes Montero House, we have, they're now moved to, construction continues, and they're now on the interior work in the project. Did we have other project status reports? Yeah, Pascamasket treatment water, thank you. That closed on May 26th, having cleared the title. So I think at this point, and we released 90% of the funds, and so we are waiting for their closeout report and a copy of the conservation restriction that was recorded for the property. So if we get the closeout report and the copy of the conservation restriction, then we release the, we can approve the release of the other 10%. You may have that back, yes.
I'm gonna send it to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good. I think I actually may have that one.
Okay.
Okay. And just make sure, no other ones I've missed. Let me just double check. Okay, we still need, yeah, Mr. Vitale owes us a few. Okay, that's what we have at this point. Related to the project status, I have forwarded to folks the email from the harbor master, Steve Mello, and that's the question of their, the dinghy storage improvement project expires, the term for that MOU expires on August 1st. And so the question that was posed to the harbor master was, since they did not get the SEC grant for the balance of the 50,000 that they had projected, I think it was 50,000, then were they going to be able to proceed with the project? So, and could he give us a plan for that? And so he wrote back to me and forwarded to you his response, which was they had confirmed with Mr. Carrero and that there are sufficient funds in the waterways, what do you call those funds? Enterprise funds. That have been approved by town meeting that could be used for this project. So what they're proposing to do is basically use the Waterways Enterprise Fund to replace the state grant funds that they did not get. And therefore, they could proceed with the project in the full scope as proposed. So with that, I think we need to entertain then a vote to extend the term of the MOU, current MOU. I'm thinking probably to December 31st. I'm not imagining it's a very complicated project.
We didn't do that one last month?
No, we put that on hold
Okay.
just to confirm that they had the funds to actually do the project.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any other question? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Very good. My agenda keeps moving around in front of me. Okay.
Do you want to sign these MOUs?
Yeah, and then, right, and then the MOUs, we received the Exhibit As, and so I'm now signing on behalf of the committee. This is for the DCTV and, what was the other one? He says, yep, the cemetery, the Joseph Davis Cemetery. Great, so those are now executed. That's terrific, thank you. And Michael and Margaret, can you all just give us any update on the housing production plan, kind of,
We have more money than the bank.
anything you want to say about that?
Well, all I can say is that I hope all of you saw the survey that was in the Dartmouth Weekly. And we're gonna meet again, I guess, in August, after Serpent has done a lot more homework on sales and then reviewed the survey. I thought the survey was very, very good. Did anybody take that survey? Yeah, I did. Anybody? Okay.
It was on Facebook too?
No, it was on Dartmouth
Done with
Weekly,
weekly, so.
online,
Yeah.
online. Well, what happened was they had 100
I
people.
think the town forwarded it. I think it came from the selectmen's. I remember seeing a survey that was,
Yeah.
had listed a bunch of things.
Yeah, but
Okay, thank you.
the one that I've seen was on Dartmouth Weekly. I don't know what anybody else saw. But originally, they had put a survey on Facebook, and they only got 100 people answering. So I said, that's not enough. You gotta do something else, because we're not gonna design housing after only 100 people in the town.
Yeah.
So they put it on Dartmouth Weekly, and I know a lot of people here have seen it and answered it, and it was it was well-written and a very
It was a
good
pretty good
survey.
survey.
Yes, it was very good. So I'm dying to see the results of that survey. You still can go online and take it if you missed it.
Yeah, as I mentioned last month, I missed the June meeting.
Yeah.
Accidentally, and so, anyway, and it sounds like they're not meeting in July, so the next
No,
one's in August.
meet in August now.
So, right, so I'll
Yep.
attend the next one.
So we're hoping that Serpent comes up with what the survey says, what we need in town, okay? And it was quite interesting, because they have little houses, duplexes, multifamilies. So it'd be interesting to see what the town residents would like in the town.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now on our agenda, we have one project for the historic preservation related for the Aiken House. And what we need to do tonight is talk about this proposal, identify any questions that we have for the sponsor, and then if there's any information additional information that we would like to have, I turn that then into a letter to the sponsor, inviting them to our August meeting, in which part of our meeting is excuse me, is a public hearing, in which the sponsor presents this short presentation, and then hopefully has answered our questions and has the additional information. Are you supporting two committees at the same time?
He's looking for conservation, but it's Zoom.
Got it. Okay. Oh, that's what he's looking for. Okay. Great. So we have a proposal from Dartmouth Heritage Preservation Trust, which has a lease on the property from the town. This is a town-owned property. And they have a lease on the property, and this is a proposal. They are requesting from the CPC $22,800, so we have the short form proposal. They expect to put up another $2,200, so projecting total costs of $25,000. And this is to do water and moisture mitigation of the Aiken House cellar. So, any questions that arise on this that we need to pass on? Any additional information that we'd like? Our discussion of what we support or not support, I would say, we should table that until after the presentation, just giving kind of the sponsor kind of the full kind of space to make their case and present the project. So here, we just want to know, do we have questions? What do we want to know more about or clarified, et cetera, et cetera?
Excuse me, Buddy,
Yeah.
do we have a total expense on that Aiken House? Do we know what we've, the total?
Certainly know, what I can do is get that number and email it to you, previous awards to the Aiken House, yes.
Buddy, when I got this, I went by there, I know that it's kind of in a little valley there with that driveway they put in the back, but there's a stone wall to the back of it. The water seems to be kind of being held up there. I'd be concerned that, I mean, I understand the water in the basement, but unless we get the water off the property, it's a horrible looking stone wall. I don't know if it's a masonite wall or something from the neighbor next door, but there's something that's there. I don't know if that can be incorporated, maybe fixing that or putting a drainage out to the street to try to pull the water off the property, because if you go there, where they put that dirt driveway, she wanted to pave it at one time.
Yeah.
Behind it, it seems to be, the matter of fact, they've just planted some new grass there, it's brown now, but it was green before. And the water seems to be pooling there near the building, so I don't think it's just a basement
Oh,
issue.
okay.
I think it's maybe something like maybe with a pitch that's there. And they may want to expand this down the road to maybe try to fix that back section there to try to get pitch the land either towards Rockland Street or to the back to the lower half behind the old Cushman School. I don't know, I see a lot of rocks there. I don't know if they're any historical. I mentioned that once to her. I forget. I know there's one up front that they didn't want to touch, but the ones behind. If you go there and you see it, it's on a Rockland Street side. It borders that house right there. It's kind of like a ragged-looking stone wall that's there, but it looks to me like the water's kind of pooling there, which is probably, I don't know, 25 feet, 30 feet away from where that water may be getting into the basement around the house, which could be part of the problem. I mean, if we want to fix it, it's been around since 1700, we might as well fix it right.
Okay, I'll fashion a question about that.
Yeah, something like
So kind
that.
of what have they considered, what needs to be done there in the grading
Yeah,
of
the
the
mitigation
property?
where the low spot is, where that driveway is, I mean, because I think that driveway was put in, it used to be all grass surface there. It's just kind of a gravelly area, so I'm not sure if that's contributing to, I mean, it's fixable. I mean, I read what this guy wants to do, it's all fixable with, the French drains to get the water away. But if it's pulling away to a low spot, that's self-defeating, because they'll just backfill back to the house. So that's my only concern with this one.
Yeah.
Is this Paul Chiquette the same Paul Chiquette who did the library? Does anybody know?
I do not know.
No, okay.
This guy's a historical mason, so.
Right, yeah, he was an historical guy, Paul Chiquette.
It could, yeah, they did say the guy from Mattapoisett, right? Yeah, it could be him, could be the same one.
Yeah, I just wonder.
So I can pose that as a question, just to confirm if that's the same
I don't
contractor.
know. I'm wondering if it was.
Which library are you talking about?
Southworth,
The old Southworth or the
the new one.
new one? Okay.
So, Buddy, I just have a general question. So obviously, this scope has to do with the basement floor for that amount of money. But are they going after other resources to do additional work to the building or to like it seems like they are, because they have a full scope of other items here.
Right, the other things like the roof and the chimney.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my only questions related to that are, just to confirm that maybe that scope has some of that drainage, you know, in it. And then the second thing would be like, how our little portion is getting, is it all gonna be happening at the same time? Or, you know, just from a sequencing perspective, you know what I mean? Where do we fit, where does this, our little project that we'd be funding, where does that fit into the
Some of
bigger
the
picture?
other work that's.
Yeah.
that
Well,
is
this one is,
mentioned.
this is a total, at 54,000, I think that was the total of all the projects from 2019. I think she just added them all up for that.
But I think it's some of the roof, in some of those comments, I think some of the roof shingles and some water damage on the chimney, I guess. There's a couple of other things noted.
No, the only request is just for the floor.
Right.
Right.
But the other thing, she said some of the other, I think she listed some of the money, other money that they spent outside of
CPA funds.
CPA funds. I think these were all donations or whatever they had. If you read deeper into that, it looks like it was outside that. That's what they've spent maintenance-wise, total-wise. She even listed the annual cost.
Yeah, it was a little confusing, like what has, you know, I think she's proving that they've spent some of their own money on these things, but
Yeah,
what
correct.
has been done, what needs to be done,
Yeah, that's all.
it all kind of
Just
like,
kinda like
kind of flowed
connect the
together.
dots for us a little bit would be helpful,
Yeah.
that's all. But other than that, yeah.
Sure, when she comes in, she'll explain it.
So they've already put French drains in.
That's what they want the funding for.
Oh, that's what they want the funding for, okay,
Yeah, that's just for on the, yeah, that's around the basement,
all right.
the foundation.
Yeah, I think that, they haven't done that work yet.
Gotta do it, okay.
Oh, yeah, I see that now.
Yeah, he's
Total
like-
cost
yeah.
above 54,660.
Yeah, that's all the things that they've done. She's gone through there.
Yeah, I think it's on page 4 of the, I think, Michael, some of what you're referring to of
Yep,
the
I see it now, sorry.
study and proposal, existing conditions. There's, and then, so here you mentioned, there's mention of some work on the roof. And then seems to be a heavy moisture issue on the chimney in the attic. Recommended a new roof with some rafter color beam reinforcement. So it's kind of, is there a plan for this other work? And then I think, as you're saying, where does this specific request fit into kind of the sequencing of that?
Yeah, that's all.
There's some window work. Okay. Cited in the study. Page 4. I did, one technical question I had was just what the status of the lease is with the town. So we should probably get an update on that.
I think I read something about that in there. Maybe it got hidden.
Once it expires, she'll be eligible for that 30-year, like everybody else is getting.
30 years, is that what they,
Yeah.
people want, 30 years?
If what?
30 years is what a lot of them are asking for because of funding.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah, on page,
Yeah.
doesn't have a number on it.
They have a letter, because they got F.
It's where, it's on the, I think it's on the page, it's right above her signature. Early on, it says the lease renewal of the Aiken House with the town of Dartmouth is pending upon meeting with the new town administrator sometime in
Oh,
July
okay.
2025.
okay, thank you. I totally did not catch that.
There it is,
All
yeah.
right, so that's a key. Okay, so that's gonna be a key issue, because obviously we need to be concerned about commitments towards something that the DHPT may not actually have any standing to work on the property. So certainly we'll have to flag that. Thank you, Chris, I did not catch that. And so I had a question just in general, and I think just kind of from, it'll be my own edification, so certainly any work that preserves a building in historic preservation pretty much is eligible, because it's if you don't do base work or foundation work and the house falls down, it's kind of defeats the purpose. So you do this, you do foundation work and things like that, or electrical that might need to be updated. You don't hold on to the antique electrical to preserve it so it can burn the place down someday. You kind of modernize it. So those kinds of things, handicapped accessibility, all kind of fit within kind of historic preservation, kind of recognizing just what it takes to preserve a property, but also kind of the standards of making these properties accessible. But the thing I had with this question I had for Diane in this is, this house in particular, mission of this house, and I'm familiar with this, and John is, we go back kind of years, so we've seen proposals and iterations over this. Originally, the idea back in many years ago, the idea was this is a very historic piece of property, one of the original houses, and so the idea was to preserve the house and restore it to its original condition. What they found and had to kind of pivot was that over the life of this particular house, there have been so many, because it's been privately occupied, so many changes to the house over its lifetime that it was too substantially changed to be able to preserve it or restore it back to its original, condition. Just too many things have been added and changed along the way and stuff. The original stuff simply wasn't there. So the pivot was the house, very historic and important in the town's history, but also could be, I think, how is it described? Like a working house in the sense of it could then illustrate historically how this property was changed and altered over time and the different methods and materials that were used. So that fair to say? And so there's parts of walls that are preserved, sections of walls preserved because they had some of the original wallpaper that was put on. And then other parts, are, so, and so I think the house is such that you can see the kind of changes in materials and methods that were used in this house over the course of hundreds of years, a couple hundred years or more. And so the thing that struck me here, so one of those things is the foundation work. And so if this looks like it's proposing to put a cement floor in, do the French drains on the outside, but then point and coat the interior foundation walls with waterproofing, kind of that waterproofing material. So my one very esoteric question is, how does that square with the mission of showing the original workman, showing the various workmanship and styles and stuff like that? Does that covering of the interior foundation walls change that in any way. I'm sure she has an answer to that, but that would be my kind of due diligence question about that.
It seems to me the house as it is today is a composite of
Many generations,
what different parts of it have been at various points in time.
yes.
And at each point, each of those points in time, the work that was done was representative of the time it was
Correct.
done.
Yep,
But more importantly, driven by, the thing's got to continue to function as a building.
yes, it's got to stand
And
up.
It's
Yes.
got to stand up, and
That's what she's trying to do.
close behind that is keep the water out of it.
Yes, and try to deal with humidity.
Well, she talks about mold and the moisture coming
Yeah.
up through, so I mean, I think it's, knowing her, I don't think this was taken lightly as far as
No, I think,
modification of
like I said, I
anything.
think she will have a very, very good response to that, but I think that's a question.
I mean, if we stipulate going in that we understand that it is not all going back to 1672
Yeah,
in May, whatever the year was.
Right.
And,
64, I think, wasn't it?
and so, I mean, it is representative of various points in time.
yeah,
I think that's also
Been in a house
something that's
before. I went to
commonly
school,
done
people
in
lived there.
historic houses in towns, like if you go to Strawberry Bank, there are
Bowens
several
went there.
or
buildings that
just one conversation, yeah,
are period, and they
Yeah.
are set in a particular time. And then there are others that have done what the Aiken House does and preserve different aspects of how it's changed over time so that you can see that.
yeah.
As far as the basement goes, in a way that's an educational piece, because the reason the house probably didn't fall down when there was a dirt floor and everything was because it was built to function in all the seasons with the windows open and without the modern things that have been added over time. And
Right.
now that it's not being used that way, it has issues
Yeah.
that, had it been left alone the way it was in 17, whatever, it probably wouldn't be having these issues.
Mhm, right, yeah.
So,
But it changes everything when you start keeping the windows shut and trying to
Adding heat.
control the humidity
Yeah,
and all those
yeah,
kinds of
yeah.
things coming from somebody who lives in the 1800 house and just put in the French drains and the cement
Again,
floor.
Again, the water table has changed with all, there was no asphalt, Dartmouth Street wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right,
You know,
that
so it's-
too.
that's all changed. That's what I say about the wall, a lot of things have changed there, maybe retaining some of that moisture that's there. I think that's all
Yes.
kind of a holistic approach to try to get that stuff away from there. If we can remediate that problem with the water to get it out of there in another fashion, I think that would be a better deal. I mean, we got a lot of money into it, that's,
Other questions or information we would like to pass on? Okay, I will kind of work on wording, but and this is a piece of information I can come up with, but, you know, what's the total commitments to date to this project over the 20-some-odd years that I think we've supported this project? Is there a plan and sort of about working with the problems with grading on the Rockland side of this property? And how will that, is there plans to address that along with the French drain that's being put in? How are they gonna address that? Which is, want to know the contractor's experience. Did he work on this is the same contractor that worked on the Southworth Library. Is there other aspects of this house that have identified in existing conditions in the report that need work? What is the plan for that work? And how does this work fit into that in terms of sequencing? How does the work that's going to, the aspect of the scope of work, which is to cover the interior foundation walls, how does that square with kind of this, it's a study house, that was the word. The study house, which also provides kind of opportunity to see the various parts of construction in this house, and have they thought about how they might try to deal with that aspect of it, since it seems to me that this would cover up the actual being able to see the foundation work. Obviously, it's a balance, so she'll have a good response to that. She's very thorough. Those are the questions and information I have, and I'll kind of work on the grammar a little better in sending a letter to her. Anything else you want to add to that?
That's good to
All
me.
right. As always, Diane is very thorough, so, you know, a lot of information. I learned a lot about humidity. And old buildings that were, you know, as I think one of the consultants, and it was a very good quote of like, you know, essentially, look, back then, you know, yeah, it was a little cold inside. That's the way people had to just put up with it, being a little cold inside. But for a property, that was good for the property. The property got cold inside when it was cold outside, and got warm inside when it got warm outside. And it could live for a long time like that. Great. All right, thank you. Next I have on our agenda is old business. The website, I'm just working on sending Magnolia the project data for expanding the information that you can see from the GIS map. So that will just be rolling along for several months. I'll get to it, you know, a little bit of a pace of getting stuff to her, and then they'll upload the information.
Did you know that she was leaving?
I did not. She did not call me about that.
She is leaving.
She is leaving.
Yes, her last day is the 11th.
Okay, so I need to get about 40 or 50 things to her in the next day.
Before Friday.
And say, geez, I hope you're not gonna leave without finishing this. Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Gave her resignation.
All right. Well, heavens, Magnolia,
McComish.
The website.
what's she gonna do? may I
She
ask?
is going to work for a senator in Boston,
The state senator.
the state
Oh,
senator.
good for her.
Which one?
I don't know, I don't know.
Oh, good for her.
I think she
Yeah,
said.
it's exciting.
Montigny?
She's a nice girl.
I don't
Yeah,
think so. I don't-
yeah.
I don't think so. That would be
for her.
cool.
Nice kid.
Yeah, good for her. Yeah.
Well, then,
So I would bring you that news.
that, yes, that is sad news for me, because I'm not sure. All right, I will definitely reach out to her and say, so who's gonna do this while you're away?
Oh, drop it on the due town
Yeah.
administrator.
But if she likes you, maybe she'll continue to do it for you.
That's true, that's true. All right. And I don't, I have not gotten on, I haven't talked to Mark about getting on the Concom agenda for a future meeting, but I'll work on that. And that's basically our next step there, is just talk to Concom and say, this is how this process works. This is where we need them to support pursuing conservation restrictions, and doing them jointly would probably be a good model for how to do that without burdening the very short staff that they have. And historic building inventory, we're kind of on the
I
cusp.
actually have an update.
All right.
Yes,
Yeah.
she is beginning the process on, during the week of the 21st of this month.
Oh, excellent.
And we're having a Zoom meeting, myself, Sue Guiducci, and Lynn will be meeting by Zoom just around that week,
Yeah.
just to make sure we're all on the same page. She has been already reviewing all the properties from afar and kind of getting a handle on what's been done so far in this town and where everything is, neighborhoods, things like that, so we're about to get started.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you were the liaison for the
Right.
Historic Commission, okay, great with her. So when we, it sounds like she, I think if I remember right, she intends to try to do all of this a bit and then get paid, or is it, you expect progress payments?
No, I think at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
once it's all been approved,
Yeah.
because Mass Historical has to take a look at it.
Yeah.
We review each property.
Yeah.
You know, the Form B for each one and make sure that it looks good to us, and send it to them, and then we pay her.
Great, excellent, excellent, that's terrific news. And one thing I don't have on here, but I don't want to lose sight of is, Susan, is this whole question of an agricultural trust fund that's eligible for the CPA. Can you remind me where where that has been left off? Because that was kind of with the Ag Commission to pursue.
Yeah, who was it left with in the town? I need to contact them. The AgCom doesn't meet in the summer because
Yeah.
it's so many farmers.
Yeah, I think the last I heard, I
There
think
was
this is
that,
through
like-
Sue. It went to Gary, and Gary sent
Yeah, it
it.
was, yeah.
And then Savastano said it wasn't, he didn't think it was necessary, and so it didn't get onto the warrant.
Yeah, so it's still, that's where it is.
Yeah, okay.
So I can connect with Sue and connect with them and see
Yeah,
where it is. I mean, the hopes was if it does have to go to town meeting, that it would be in October.
yes, yeah. I wonder, so I don't know what the committee feels, but I wonder if we would be interested in trying to move this question along. And so I think one way it could be moved along is based on the information that we received from the coalition and the Department of Revenue's opinion for, I think it was the town of Duxbury or something like that. And the existing agricultural preservation trust that the town created, that trust, this is the working group, concluded that trust that exists today is not eligible for CPA funds. It was not explicitly set up under the statutory reference that the Department of Revenue has indicated would be necessary. So it doesn't quote any state chapter. So it's, it's something Dartmouth created, but didn't explicitly create it under the state statute that is eligible for CPA funds. So one way we can move this question along while the farmers are farming is and it's on our dime, would be our legal, we'd have to pay for this, but basically we would share that information with Attorney Savastano and saying at this point, we are interested in supporting agricultural preservation in the town. This trust, we have determined from our working group that it is not eligible for CPA funds, and it looks to us like if we wanted to support such a fund, it would need to be approved under statute, blah, blah, blah. So we could say that as a committee, and basically what we're asking for then is the clarification from the town council about, is this existing trust CPA eligible or not? And we can share that information and just move the question. Yeah.
Buddy, quick question for you, I'm thinking mechanically in my head, because I'm way more familiar with affordable housing trust funds and trusts in other communities too. And I know, for instance, like in Needham and other places where the CPA fund funds the Affordable Housing Trust, and then the Affordable Housing Trust then uses those funds to fund
Right.
projects, you know,
Yeah.
and different things. Is it a similar mechanics system? Like, would it function the same way that the Ag Trust would be eligible for the funds? I assume they'd have to apply or something, or however the funds would transfer over. And then it would be that trust that would then get applications for projects and make determinations on whether they're funding.
Yeah,
And so we're dealing with one board as opposed to 5 or 6 projects. We're no longer the board that's
Right.
allocating
And-
the resources.
right, and town meeting approval isn't required.
I got it, okay.
And I think that's one of the reasons why those
It
can
expedites
be
things.
advantageous, to be able to be responsive and stuff. Now, under those things, they, you know, like the Affordable Housing Trusts that have CPA funds can only use the funds within the scope of the CPA. And so generally what there are grant agreements that stipulate the limitations that are reflected in the CPA, and then also require reporting back to the CPC in order to be able to monitor that they've used the funds correctly, kind of thing. So you would have those arrangements and stuff.
Yeah.
What the town of Duxbury did several years ago was they wanted to set up they wanted to give CPA funds to a conservation fund that's under the Conservation Commission. And the CPA, the DOR said, Department of Revenue said, yes, you can do that, because that is a fund that is established by this state statute, and they give the reference to the state statute. And basically, in the statute, it then gives certain parameters for how a conservation fund is, what you can use it for, and who oversees it, and stuff like that. So basically, DOR said, I think the interpretation of that is, yeah, you can do that because the state already provided a structure, and you can fund that structure, as opposed to making up something you guys want to do and just give that money, give CPA funds to that thing. This has got a structure that the legislature established, so if you want to fund that, you can do that. What we found is there's another section of that same statute which applies to agricultural commissions, local agricultural commissions, that is verbatim the same language, just replace agriculture with conservation.
I see.
So Stuart Saginaw at the coalition was like, yeah, that's, very likely, since the DOR was fine with that paragraph, the mirror paragraph for agriculture wouldn't present anything different. So that's our thinking. So a warrant was drafted for the June town meeting, but that article did not get on the warrant because town council said, I don't think you need it. So we can move this along a little more. If we as a committee were okay to basically say, this is our understanding, is that correct? That we can't fund this because of these reasons, and here's our source of information for that. Is that correct? Because if the answer is, yeah, that's correct, then the Agricultural Commission, at least can, when they get back from the fields, can pursue the article to put the right kind of fund into place that town meeting would have to approve. Or the council can make an argument that we can use CPA funds for the existing preservation trust, and we would see if we feel we could hang our hat on that. So what do you think about that proposal? We asked Savastano for an opinion.
You need
Yeah,
a
Margaret.
motion?
No, that's okay. Gonna ask something else, go ahead.
Yeah, a motion to request a legal opinion on the eligibility of the Dartmouth Agricultural Preservation Trust for CPA funding.
I'll move
Okay.
that.
So moved.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right, any opposed? No, okay, great, and so maybe that'll move that question along a little bit while you guys are working.
Buddy, I have a question. I know I've been gone a while, but I remember, and I can't remember the last meeting we brought it about the housing rehab, that Chris Vitale was gonna change it to a $40,000 grant. Where
Yes,
are we with that?
We have heard nothing back. That's one of the status reports that we're waiting for from Mr. Vitale is on the home rehab loan
Right.
program. Where, what's
I
the
hate to
status
have
of
another
that?
winter go by and some people
Right.
can't use it.
Right,
I mean, it's July already. I mean, it's been, what, a year already? Over a year.
oh, yeah, it's been over a year.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I think that's important to some people.
So, what I hope is to get his progress status report. I asked, those are the ones we need from, Chris Vitale, our, the rehab loan program, the housing trust, the dredging of the harbor, and the planning for Pontiac, the master plan for Pontiac, Dias Landing. I think those are the ones. There might have been one other, but I think those are the ones. We want, and kind of how we work, we want at least one progress report per quarter, or whenever you ask for money, an invoice. But we haven't received in the last quarter any progress reports on those projects, so. He said he was gonna get to them, so I'm just gonna ask him again. Hopefully we'll have them for August.
I hope so.
August meeting.
I've been really pushing for that
Yes.
housing rehab because, I think it's important, and then put it in Dartmouth Weekly, the same thing like we did with the survey. Everybody saw that survey, okay? So I think people might come forward.
Yep,
And we have the money.
and we have the money, yes, yes, and that's one of the things, if, in Donna's report, you go through a few of those pages, you'll
Right.
see the outstanding, current projects and outstanding balances and stuff.
Right.
And you'll see the rehab loan program, I think, has 3 or 4 awards to it. And so you'll see, the money that is kind of,
Once
Of-
things
of
are straightened out upstairs, I think we'll see things back. Things will get back to, we consider normal.
You do? You
Yeah.
think
I
so?
have hope,
Mhm.
positive. All we
okay.
have is hope.
So at our next meeting, what's the date of our next meeting? It'll be August 12th.
December what?
I will not be here.
Okay. At that meeting, we'll hear a presentation, and then, on the Aiken House. And then, at that meeting, typically, we will have a discussion about making a recommendation to town meeting and make our decision about any recommendation related to that request for funds. Very good. So I think if we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Uh, We're really ahead of schedule if you want to talk about it for, I think, let's see. I think 17 minutes.
You want a motion to reconsider? No.
Okay, all in favor then? Aye. Thank you so much.